On this show, we talk a lot about how to develop the people that you hire, but how do you get the right people in the first place? Today on the show, we have Frida Polli from Pymetrics, who really talks about helping people realize their potential from the beginning all the way through to the end of their career.
Welcome to Masters of Employee Development, Mike Acker's YouTube segment devoted to training team members in any type of organization. Your host is a best-selling author, corporate trainer, and business leader. Find out more about Mike at mikeacker.com. Each episode, Mike welcomes a CEO, HR director, or other experienced manager responsible for leadership and development. Together, Mike and his guest expert discuss training successes, challenges, and best practices. Lean in, listen, and take part in a community dedicated to improving life through increasing leadership. Now, here's your host, Mike Acker.
Frida, thank you so much for joining me on the show today.
Absolutely, Mike. Pleasure to be here.
So let's start out with just knowing a little bit more about who you are and about the company that you've started.
Sure. So my name is Dr. Frida Polli. I am a former Harvard and MIT trained cognitive neuroscientist turned startup founder. The company that I run, Pymetrics, leverages the behavioral science we were doing in academic labs for the purpose of talent assessment. So we assess talent via soft skills. And instead of asking people questions about what they think about themselves or putting them through sort of boring math tests, we assess soft skills using tools that were developed by cognitive scientists. We call them tools, but they're actually like fun little games that you do on the computer that look at everything from, memory, attention, to how emotionally sensitive you are, to altruism, to your risk propensity, a whole bunch of different things. And that's what makes it fun, is we get to look at a person in 3D rather than just a 2D piece of paper.
I love it. Where did you get this idea from? Was this part of your...
Yeah. So, I escaped the lab. I was a scientist on the loose, and I found myself in an MBA program at Harvard and, thinking I wanted to do something more commercial with the science that we had been developing. And, basically all MBA students do for 2 years is recruit. So I had a front row seat to recruiting, and I could tell that what people were trying to understand about someone was not what was on their resume. You could easily understand that. It was really, who is this person? Like, let me have a 3D picture of this person. Let me understand them from a cognitive, social, and emotional perspective. And that's how the idea came to be, is that we had been measuring these things in the lab, all of us crazy scientists, using sort of new cognitive science technology. And so I knew that it could be done. And that's basically the secret sauce that was missing from this equation. So it was a pretty easy light bulb to go off.
Are there times where you still miss the lab and want to go back?
I feel like we have a mini lab in Pymetrics anyways, so whenever I miss it, I go hang out with the data scientists, and then I don't miss it anymore. So
but I love the mission of Pymetrics is to help people. Well, why don't you say it better?
Yeah, it's to help everyone realize their true potential.
And even in the hiring process, right?
Yeah. I mean, generally, like not only in hiring, but also in mobility, reskilling, learning and development. I mean, I think the analogy I always use is that I think our traditional ways of evaluating people for careers or jobs is very sort of 1950s. It's sort of like, you should be smart, hardworking, and agreeable, right? And if you're those three things, then you're going to be a great fit everywhere. That's sort of historically the way we viewed talent. I give the analogy, it's almost like what dating was probably like 30 years ago for women. Oh, you should be, pretty, cook well, and know how to iron a shirt, or maybe it was 50 years ago, right? That's a very sort of cookie cutter, very constraining approach to thinking about careers. I think now in dating, you could be whatever you want to be. You don't even have to be a man or a woman anymore, right? And you will find that perfect fit on the other side, because we know now that it's like, everyone has a fit somewhere. And I don't think we've taken that same mentality to the world of work. And that's what cognitive science allows you to do. It allows you to see somebody very multidimensionally. And it also allows you to really understand that everybody's different and that everyone is going to have a fit somewhere.
Well, one of the reasons why I was drawn to your profile on LinkedIn and reached out to you for this podcast was not only the success that you've had in your company, but this is something that I am personally passionate about. So not only soft skills right here, connect through emotional intelligence. That was my fifth book, I believe. And as I work with people in communication, I'm constantly seeing this need. And a lot of people are talking about their hiring, and they don't have a way to go about it that is scientific.
Yep.
We're applying that to everything else. So why not apply it to something like hiring people?
Absolutely. Yep.
The other reason why was when I was in my master's program in my young 20s, I had a professor in educational psychology who talked about potential. And paraphrasing his words, he said, as a young person, potential is amazing.
Yeah.
As an old person, potential is a waste. As an old person, you want expertise. And those stayed with me. And so for all these years, the goal has been help people realize their potential.
Yeah.
So let's talk about who is someone that you want to brag on, or someone that you could say, this is one of the success stories that we've had of someone I've been able to invest in and develop.
I don't want to pick any particular person, because I think it really is the Pymetrics way that we have taken people who really didn't have the background or the expertise to do X, Y, and Z. And I'm going to disagree with your professor slightly. They have been young, old, and everywhere in between, and said, this is really a launching pad for you to do something completely different. And I can't tell you the number of people who literally come from like government and now they're running DEI initiatives somewhere, or, somebody who was a mechanical engineer and now they're a data scientist. I mean, just like, really amazing stories, right? So it's really our whole mission is not only to facilitate this in the world at large, but also to do it internal to the company, to take people who don't have the background to do X, Y, and Z, and to really give them the opportunity and the training to do so. So there's no one person. It's really just there's a lot of people that I think who've come through Pymetrics and been able to do that. And I'm super proud.
Let's go to that college professor for a moment, because I thought about that for a little while. Because here he is talking about, as a young person, potential is great. As an old person, you want to have realize your potential.
Right.
My dad's in his 70s. I don't feel he's old. He still skis better than me, scuba dives, surfs,
totally
such. And he opened a law firm at 65.
There you go.
And he's flourishing as a law firm.
Totally. Yeah. And I mean, my dad is the same. Like, he was a career consultant at McKinsey for 30 years. And then, at 60, he was an entrepreneur and started a chocolate brand that actually is like super successful. I see it in, near my neighborhood, and in many airports worldwide. And then 10 years after that, he started a private equity fund. And he finally retired, and he's like 82. So I personally believe that there's a lot more in us than we have historically given ourselves credit for. And I think it's also because like life is changing, right? Very few people are going to retire, I think, at 60 or whatever. I think people live longer, live healthier longer, have more sort of cognitive reserve these days. And I think that it's just, and I think that people want to feel fulfilled. I think historically our attitude towards work was like, oh, it's a 9 to 5. I got to get through it. I got to save enough for retirement. Oh, finally I'm at retirement, right? I can just like do what I want to do. But I think now the whole point is like, find something that you're super passionate about and that you love doing, right? And I think that's exactly what Pymetrics is intended to do. It's trying to help everyone find their absolute best fit in the world of work, so that it doesn't feel like a job,
Yeah, so I am curious to know, for a different conversation, what your dad's going to do next, because he's only 82.
I know, right? I know.
I'm sure he's getting bored doing just stuff himself.
Yeah.
But to our point of developing people, talk to me about how you went from one person with an idea around some other students to now. I mean, on your LinkedIn, it says 124 employees, which probably means that you have more. And so talk to us a little bit about how you scaled from here to there, and how long it took, and some of the things that you did along the way.
Yeah. I mean, look, I don't think I always say building a company is a little bit like having a relationship. There's probably some fundamentals that you can do right, but everybody's relationship and everybody's company is different, right? I think for us, my co-founder, who is also a woman, I think for us, it was really important to have sort of that scientific domain expertise, right? So I was kind of like the cognitive scientist. She was the data scientist. Having that domain expertise really allowed us to build a platform that then attracted, venture capital. And that really gave us a platform for bringing in people that, again, were first time, whatever it was that they were doing, and really giving people a platform to grow and scale whatever it is that they were, trying to do. So I don't think there was like a secret sauce. I think very early, what we did do though, is identify sort of 6 values that we believe are, very Pymetrics, right? We did that really when we were like less than 30 employees. And, the values are motivated by the mission of like helping everyone realize their true potential, choosing positivity and teamwork, bias to action, act with transparency and integrity, and do the impossible. And I think that having those values at a very early stage really allowed us to develop a culture that I believe in any case was really the key to success, right? That Peter Drucker, I don't know if you know who he is, but he, has this great quote, which says, culture beats strategy for lunch every day. And I kind of agree with that. I think if you foster a culture where you have very clear values that you're trying to foster, within everyone, it really allows people to flourish and to realize their true potential. And by the way, that culture could be different somewhere else. I'm not saying those are the 6 values you need to have, but I think having a culture that manifests whatever aspect you are trying to promote in the world, I think is super important.
Have you seen those cultural values shift throughout time? Have you done some?
No, intentionally, we've tried to keep those really core to what we do, right? It doesn't mean we're a static organization and no one is able to influence it. But I think that, let's take motivated by mission. If you're not motivated by the mission of helping everyone realize their true potential, maybe Pymetrics isn't the right startup for you, right? Or for example, like bias to action and do the impossible. If you're not motivated by like really making a difference and doing that in a way that sometimes feels like it's impossible, then again, the way that we work maybe isn't right for you. So we've really tried to stay true to those values, more than like having shifting values every year because new people are coming in. It's.
And you don't have the 1990s success story posters all over the place with the cultural values. No. Although that might be something to bring back. I miss those.
Right. Maybe we'll update them a little bit for 2021. But yeah.
They were pretty cute if you think about it.
I mean, they were cute. They were fun to laugh at, and yeah.
Yeah, they have posters too. So what are some challenges that you have seen that have shown up that were some big turning points perhaps, or caused the creation of something else, or caused even some confusion and downturn?
Yeah, well, just take the recent pandemic, right? So we were.
Oh wait, you had that too? The pandemic affected you?
Here, okay. Yeah. Just navigating COVID. A lot of our clients were like, hey, by the way, not only are we not hiring, we're actually, unfortunately, letting people go. So we went through a pretty dramatic transformation last year in terms of like, not so much like what we were doing as a company, but the types of products that we needed to deliver to meet our clients where they needed us to be met, where they needed us to meet them, right? So instead of just focusing on hiring, we now do a lot of mobility work, right? Because people are like, well, we're not hiring, but boy, oh boy, has this business environment changed a whole hell of a lot. Like, could you help me with that? And so, and so I think it's like, we have transformed in response to, as have many companies, in response to recent events. And I think that that's really led to, a stronger, healthier platform overall,
What is it that you're telling your clients that you can share here for this audience for free and a shorter, reduced amount, that you have found people saying that's really helpful?
I think, again, this really shouldn't be a light bulb moment, but for many clients it is. It's really that focusing on the talent that you have within an organization and helping them develop their true potential. I think clients are needing to change, right? Like with the Great Resignation and COVID, the combination of those two things, clients understand that, my brand isn't enough to keep talent, right? Like people are walking out the door at brand name companies like there's no tomorrow. So what we shared with them is like, develop your people, give them internal mobility opportunities, give them L&D, right? Those are the types of things that are going to make you able to retain the type of talent that you want to retain, rather than literally them walking out the door and finding a different job somewhere else. And that, I think, again, it shouldn't be a light bulb moment, but I think it has been for a lot of people. And it's really, I think it's resonated well. So it's really develop your people.
It's very interesting. Yesterday, I had a conversation with CEO, as I mentioned to you, Source Craft Cocktails. And he had mentioned almost exactly the same in terms of the Great Resignation and training. And then he took it on a tangent when I asked this question. So what areas are you?
That conversation.
I wish it was too early in the morning. He said it was 5 o'clock somewhere, but I got clients here today.
Right.
So no cocktail right now. Later on. The big question, what are you doing to train people? What are you training people in? What do you feel like is maybe a no-brainer to you? But what I found out, and I'm sure you as well, when you say something that becomes so normal to you, you realize that it's brand new to somebody else. So what is it that you're training people in and teaching people in?
Well, again, I think a lot of times when people are thinking about internal mobility or developing people, they're looking only at somebody's resume or their hard skills, right? You really need to assess, and again, we use Pymetrics, you can use whatever you want to use. You really need to understand sort of their cognitive, social, and emotional aptitudes, right? Because there's 3 parts to job happiness and success. There's hard skills, got it. There's aptitudinal fit, which is what we do. And then there's also interest and motivation, right? So as people are thinking through this time of great resignation, they're raising their hand and saying, I'm interested, I'm motivated by this, and I'm not doing this, right? So you're getting that signal from the person. You have the resume. What's really missing is some way to gauge their soft skill fit to different roles. And so that's what we've been obviously using our own tool internally to do, and obviously would encourage people to figure out whatever system they're going to use to really understand somebody's core fit to a role.
Is Pymetrics available to the average consumer, or is it just something that is rolling out to?
That is a great question. We are planning on having a direct to consumer platform in early 2022. So check back. But absolutely, that's the goal, is really to allow this career assessment to happen, more broadly at scale for direct to consumer purposes. It will be free for sure. But my point is simply, we want to be able to enable this, sort of in a larger platform.
It's extremely helpful too. I tell people all the time, go study yourself, learn yourself,
Totally.
Realize in terms of communication, a lot of what I do is communication coaching.
Yep.
Understand yourself, because when you understand yourself, you can know how you should be speaking out there.
Completely.
And this sounds like something that would really help with the job.
And look, Pymetrics is obviously, we think it's a great way. There are other ways too. And I always say the more data, the better, right? In the sense that, talk to people who know you, right? We're constantly evolving as human beings. And I think the people that know you the best will also be able to give you, hopefully, if you have honest relationships with them, direct feedback as to like, hey, you're pretty good at this, maybe not so much that. That's what Pymetrics does. I think there are other ways to find that as well. And I think it's critical that we're always getting feedback about ourselves so that, we can evolve into whatever the next iteration of ourselves is. So.
Do you find, you've paralleled this with relationships. So sometimes a relationship coach, a relationship teacher, a relationship author then goes through awful relationship trauma.
Yeah.
And they've written about marriages, now they get divorced.
Right.
So sometimes what you have, you don't end up using. I know this as a communicator, sometimes the things I'm telling people to do, I don't know. So do you find in your own company that here you are talking about Pymetrics, you're walking them through this, and sometimes you're finding it difficult to get your employees to go through it, to use it?
No, I think people are pretty bought into that. You know what I mean? I think people are pretty bought into this idea of like, what is my, how can I leverage, new technology, and new soft skills assessment to really understand, my best fit. So we don't really encounter, that type of resistance. I thought you were going, where I thought you were going, and I'm just going to make this analogy.
Take it where you think.
No, just because I think that a lot of times, when we think about developing people internally and giving them feedback, a lot of times, and this has happened to me for sure, right? The feedback that you get at work is oftentimes very similar to the feedback you're getting from your friends and family, right? Like if you have flaws, it's not that you have different flaws that are showing. You're not a different person, generally speaking, at work than you are at home, right? I don't know if you've had this happen to you, right? So sometimes, people, right. People sometimes will be like, Frida, you're like a bit like a dog with a bone. Like if you have an idea, you just won't give it up. And of course, my family will tell you the same thing, right? So my point is that it can be really helpful to get people in all contexts of your life to give you feedback about what they see you best suited as. It's not like you just have to go tap your work colleagues. I think people show up the same, generally speaking, in all contexts. So all feedback, I think, can be hugely valuable.
Is there an element of Pymetrics that you're able to do that 360-degree feedback?
No. And that's, I think, again, we try to be best in class soft skills or durable skills assessment. I think there are other platforms, obviously, that we, would recommend or partner with in terms of doing other aspects of, feedback that you would, want to have. So
if you look at what you're doing there and you're going to bring in any outside source, like Enneagram, StrengthsFinder, Cliff, any of those ones, are there any of those that you like to do for fun? Even if it's just like, which friend character are you? Oh, yeah. Because I'm a Monica.
You asking me, am I a self-assessment junkie? I'm absolutely a self-assessment junkie. And I think on the Enneagram, I'm an 8 with a 3. I can't remember. Honestly, I think they're all really fun. And I think that they can be helpful, right? I think, again, Pymetrics is different in the sense that it can then be super actionable It will give you a breakdown of all of the different careers that you're well suited for, and then actually connect you to occupations, right? So it's a little different than just a sort of a self-assessment. But I think all of these self-assessments can teach you, something about yourself. So yes, I'm an ENFP, I'm an 8/3, and sure I'm a whole bunch of other things that I can't remember. I don't know which favorite Friends or Sex and the City character I am. I'm not sure I did that quiz, but but I did do the 2 MIT scientists will find you the perfect wine quiz. I did that one.
I did because I have a upcoming book, and so as a point of just humor, I actually did the which friends are you, and I found out it was a Monica, and at first I was like, what?
Oh,
and then I thought, no, actually that's probably real. That's probably real.
Absolutely,
so, and my wife,
it might be a Monica too, although I don't really know. I'll have to go and check.
If you like control.
I do.
Like there
you go.
And your strong will.
As an entrepreneur, you do like control. Most entrepreneurs love control and are strong-willed. So.
Okay, so if people don't have the opportunity to do Pymetrics and they want to hire someone,
2022, check back. Yeah.
But if they're looking at hiring, say it's a doctor's practice. I was working with a doctor last night. Yep. He's looking at hiring because his company's doing great. Yeah. And so he wants to bring someone in. What would you just say? Hey, I'm just going to give you a couple free thoughts on what to look for in hiring, and not just sending them to your website.
Sure, absolutely. No, absolutely. And so just to be clear, the thing we don't have now is direct to sort of, I'm a job seeker and I want to find out. For any companies, large and small, they can come to our website. We're happy to help. However, other than that, what I would say honestly is whatever system you're using, I would say try to break the mold from sort of traditional hiring practices. And what I mean by that is people are super reliant on the resume and super reliant on referrals. Those are the primary 2 ways that, we all get. And I think so whatever other things you think you could be doing to hire better, do them. Go give a talk somewhere, go give a talk somewhere where you might not even think, you'd normally do. And you'll be surprised at who will show up being like, hey, can I have an internship? Can I do this? Can I do that? Try to get out of your comfort zone, because I think you need to bring in new ideas and new people to the organization. And so that's just an example of something you could do. But I think it's super critical not to just go back to the same tried and tested waters, because, I think that just leads to, sort of stagnation.
I called a referral one time for somebody, different last name.
Yeah.
He said, oh yeah, that's my daughter. Oh, good. Do you have anything negative to say about your daughter?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you're right. Those are outdated in so many different ways. Yeah. Great analogies that you use here. Is there anything that you'd say, Mike, for your audience, as we're talking about developing people, here are just some things that I want to make sure people are doing, or something that you might not be doing, even if you seem to be doing everything well? Any nuggets that you just said, this is you just got to do?
Yeah, I mean, and I think it's interesting because I think as a first-time founder, I'm still learning. I don't think that I'm the perfect coach or manager or anything like that. But I think one thing I've really tried to do, and this might sound super basic, and some people are probably will roll their eyes and be like, I can't believe she didn't do this from the beginning. But really just try to step back and say, what's important to this person? How can I check in with, this person to see if they're achieving their own sort of professional and personal goals, right? And I know that sounds ridiculous. Maybe everyone's like, well, of course you should be doing that. But I think sometimes when you're running so quickly and building your own business, you don't think that way. You think, oh, what do I need to do for this? What do I need to do for that? And you just assume that people are excited to be here and they're excited to follow you, which is true. But then you have to think, well, what does this person want ultimately as their, sort of longer term career goals, and how am I helping them get there? So that's all I would say, is just stop and sort of smell the roses, and ask somebody hey, how is this helping you fulfill your professional or personal goals, every now and then.
And for you, I mean, really, when you're talking about realizing people's potential, if your managers aren't doing that for the people that they're managing, then they're not going to live up to the exact thing that you want to do.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Frida, this is great. I love your energy, your passion. I love the story of your company and what it is. I'll make sure to put that on the links and on YouTube as well. But thank you so much for taking the time here to share with me and to share with others.
Thank you.
And for all of our audience, thank you so much for tuning in. We'll check with you next time. Make sure to like, subscribe, and share. See you next week.
Thanks for listening to Advance with Mike Acker, a podcast designed to provide an edge for leaders through improving practical leadership skills and increasing confidence in speaking. Mike is a best-selling author and business owner who has helped many leaders increase their skills and their confidence, propelling them to new heights in their personal and professional endeavors. Join an incredible group of professionals taking the steps to become better leaders at connect.stepstoadvance.com. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe so you never miss an episode.